HelloSydney.com just published an article revealing Sidney Prescott's original role in the latest Scream installment. In today's video, I'll be detailing the sequences that had to be changed after the pay dispute between Sidney actress Neve Campbell and Spyglass Media. Now let's get into it. This article comes from Rodrigo Kurtz of HelloSydney.com, who was able to read an earlier draft of Scream 6 from writers James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick. The original title was apparently Scream Again, but I'm happy they went with the Roman numerals instead. The original script was completed on February 11th of 2022, just a short while before the aforementioned pay dispute. There are familiar scenes that featured Sidney delivering lines you heard from other characters, and new shots that showcased her family in Seattle. Rodrigo wasn't able to post the full script due to copyright restrictions, so I'll be reading his summary of the script and giving my thoughts. Now let's really get into it. Sidney first appears in this version of Scream 6 after Dr. Stone's far too quick death sequence. I loved that scene, but take some time to build suspense, fellas. During this murder, we would have seen Tori Spelling reprising her role as Sidney Prescott in Stab 2 on Stone's TV. Real-life Sidney Prescott drops off her kids at school. They're ages 10, 8, and 4, with the oldest being named Hannah. Sid gets a phone call similar to Part 5 and learns that Ghostface is back. A few things there. I imagine introducing the character of Hannah would have been set up for whatever the original Part 7 was going to be. There's no denying, based on modern trends in horror, that Spyglass has been wanting to turn Scream into a new trilogy ever since the first revival was announced. There are inklings of jumping points all over the place in Scream 5, especially if it's Gail's morning show taking place in New York City, or Sidney's family in general. I imagine the outline for these three movies looked similar to what we've gotten thus far, but obviously things have changed since. Mark and Sidney have a conversation where he warns her not to go to New York. Mark Kincaid, likely played by Patrick Dempsey again here, had a few lines warning her of the dangers of her past. He even says, "You keep running after this. Someday you're not gonna come back." In this version of the script, Mark is the sheriff of this seemingly suburban town where their family resides. I imagine since this role fell out from under Patrick, that could have been one of the reasons why he had such a prominent part in Eli Roth's Thanksgiving from the same studio. They were already in contact with the guy to be in a murder mystery, why not throw him in the other one? Sidney was, of course, to be present during the Ghostface shrine sequence. To sum this up quickly, basically every scene that features Gail would have also featured Sidney. She doesn't seem to offer anything here besides playing off of Gail Weathers, like she jokes with her about Kirby being a zygote and then gets in on the conversation with Sam about her abandonment issues. Not much else that seems important to the story. Sidney is also present during the sequence at Central Park, where instead of the sisters stealing the cop car, it's Sidney and Sam.
It's a cop car! You can't steal a cop car!
This is another element that I'm glad was changed. I don't see Sam and Sidney as a useful thematic unit, like how I do with Sam and Tara. Seeing the sisters work together here pushes their arc forward with how this movie inevitably ends. At first, Sam is smothering Tara, and she's sick of it. As the movie goes along, Tara realizes her big sister is just trying to care for her, and Sam realizes she needs to let Tara go, which she literally and figuratively does in the third act. Having this scene be between Sidney and Sam removes an important step in that journey for me that I'm not really all that crazy about. After Gail gets stabbed in what is likely the coolest chase scene in that entire flick, there is a nice scene where Danny gets established as more of a red herring. He apparently shows up at Gail's apartment with Sam and Sidney in this version, even though Sam never tells him where to go. Sidney even proposes that he could be the killer to Sam in the car ride over there. As the paramedics roll up, Sidney lies about being Gail's family so she can ride in the ambulance with her. We get a scene where Mark calls begging his wife to come home. Sidney insists on staying, pleading that everyone leaves these girls, and she wants to protect them. Again, I get why they wanted this in here, but it doesn't amount to much, as Sidney only pops up at the very end of the movie again to knock over the TV on Ethan's head. It's a ton of setup for a last-minute nostalgic joke that's admittedly cool, but not cool enough to take away from the narrative at hand here. I'd rather have a well-written story over a bunch of callbacks any day of the week. That seems to be the biggest problem with Scream 6 overall. While there are satisfying nostalgic moments here with Sidney, especially the TV scene, a lot of this feels like what happened with the character in Scream 5. The new chapter of Sidney's story was only told from afar and didn't offer much to the new narrative, happening front and center. The only real reason Sidney shows up in New York is to protect Gail, and I just don't think the character would have made that decision with the rest of her family on the other side of the country. With the introduction of Ghostface's utilizing online services and advanced technology that actually exist, so not the voice changer from Part 3, I just think Sidney Sidney would be far too paranoid to venture across the country, leaving her kids behind. I especially don't think she'd leave the hospital to score another Ghostface kill. This would have been a major negative towards the film overall had this been left in. Scream 6 already has too many characters, and this seemingly would have been even worse. Rodrigo also details a few other alternate plot points in this early draft. For instance, the aged Ghostface masks do not play a part in the investigation. While yes, this was another element that really only fueled the nostalgia engine at the heart of this sequel, I loved the design choice for being something different this time around. I'm glad they added this into the final cut solely for the purpose of giving Ghostface a new look with an old mask. The bodega sequence was also extended to where Sam and Tara escape, fleeing into a taxicab. Ghostface climbs on top of the car, swinging a knife at the sisters, and even pokes the driver. This results in a truck T-boning the car, flipping it upside down in the middle of the street, with Ghostface getting away as the cops rolled up. That would have rocked. I love the bodega scene, but if this was the way it concluded, I'd be losing my mind. It sounds like it would have been crazy expensive to film, but if Michael Bay was directing, I assure you it would have made it to the theaters. Dwayne Martin, who plays Joel in Scream 2, initially had a cameo appearance where he once again flees the ongoing murder spree, this time from LaGuardia Airport. Gale supposedly asks him to investigate the rumors online about Sam being the killer, but he responds with, "This is you getting involved with murders again. We need to do what I did at Windsor and just piece the fuck out." As you can see, he takes his own advice in this draft. I wonder why this was cut. Maybe some sort of scheduling conflict on Dwayne's part? This could have been funny and gave Gale more screen time investigating. I would have liked to see this. The coolest thing cut from the Scream 6 script, though, was a potential cliffhanger that saw Quinn Kirsch, or Quinn Bailey, I'm still not sure which name is the fake one, surviving her gunshot to the head, which was supposed to feel less final than it did in the movie we've all seen now. She apparently came back to life for one last scare where she gets tased by Tara and passes out. Before Sam can double tap, Tara requests that she keeps her alive, saying, "I want her to live, I want her to suffer, please." This could have been a way of reviving an old Kevin Williamson idea and placing it back into the franchise. The original ending for Scream 4 saw Jill Roberts, our killer in that flick, surviving and essentially getting away with murder. The original Scream 5 would have apparently followed Jill getting stalked by a killer claiming to know her secret. I personally would have loved to have seen that in Scream, but I guess it's executed pretty well in Williamson's show The Following, where he was finally able to flesh that idea out. This ending would have made Quinn a way more interesting character, potentially coming back for a Hannibal Lecter-style role in Scream 7. Imagine a sequence where our characters must get information out of Quinn to stop the new Ghostface in 7. Maybe this could lead to her breaking out and attempting to exact her revenge on Sam and Tara for killing her family. Maybe it's just me, but I would have loved to have seen that in part 7, but that is all but lost now. For the most part, I'm glad that most of this was cut, even some of the parts I liked. If Scream 6 had teased more for the future and then followed that up with all of the drama we had this past winter, I think excitement for part 7 would be even lower than it already is. Radio Silence departed from the franchise, Melissa and Jenna were both confirmed to be absent from the next film, and the story is shifting focus back to Sidney. That ending with Quinn would have made the writer's job way more difficult, trying to find a reason to write in a Ghostface from the last movie who was really only going after Sam over anyone else. In hindsight, this was a good decision overall, even though I would have loved to have seen something like this in a franchise that rarely cares about its killers. I'm happy that we're getting a movie that will focus on Sidney's new chapter, opposed to what happened in 5 where the character was virtually sidelined. I'm also glad they didn't do the same for 6. Sidney's involvement didn't seem to add anything besides putting fans' butts in seats. I much prefer Scream 7's apparent approach on focusing on the character again, opposed to forcing her into a supporting role. That just makes way more sense to me as a fan of all 6 of these movies. These are just my thoughts though, of course. What did you guys think about the original draft for Scream 6? Or should I say, Scream again? Should Sidney have been kept in? Would you like to see another movie where a previous Ghostface returns? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.